Good morning, and thank you for coming to spend some time with us about AI and learning as a leadership strategy. This is really to think about how we can be more resilient as leaders and as organizations. I have so many stories to tell you, so I'm just going to leap in and we're going to play around. The first thing that I like to do, though, is I like to check in. This is really my first slide, but I like to check in on where you think you may be as an audience member in this, I guess, journey that we're all going to be going on in our life. So where do you think you're at now? There's no number too high or too low. I'll give you a second to read. And you could just put those in the chat. Nice, Olga. 4, 3 to 4. Good. Yeah. And honestly, this is where I'm finding most people, unless you're like making robots and doing things that are specific to AI, you're probably more on the tip of the spear than you think you are, because you're like maybe reading articles and paying attention to things. So it's great that you're in this embracing and champion mode. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about what that's going to entail. Here's me. My background was in tech and innovation. I've had some people ask me as a coach, like, where did all this come from about this AI stuff, since I've been a coach for 5 years? And they're like, I said, well, this is where I grew up. So my background was in that agility. I was doing AI and machine learning product partnerships within finance 10 years ago. So I've been around a lot of this for a long time, and I really love to help take people on that journey. So that's been a lot of my background. And then just anecdotally, I'll just tell you that Katie, my co-founder, is actually on here today. But her and I had done a lot of work about people finding their second act and encore career. And we spent maybe 300 workshops in almost 2 years talking about the identity crisis, like the scarcity mindset about going out on your own and starting a business, this component about, well, do I have the confidence to learn something totally new and embark on something in my life? And there was a moment that Katie and I said about 6 months ago, 7, 8 months ago now, oh my gosh, everybody's going to have to go through what we were calling a rewire. And it's a rewire because of AI. So a lot of our stuff is deeply rooted in this movement and change that we're all going to have to take now in this new world. So we're really passionate about it. Today, we're going to talk about the current state a little bit. I'm going to do my promised follow-up from the email of the other 6 components. I know some of you have been here before, so you just bear with me. I'll try to come up with new stuff for you. And then we're going to talk about learning as a leadership strategy, which should be very helpful for the audience that we have here today. So I'm excited about that. So a couple things that are interesting is there's a lot of people that are like, we're not doing AI, or we can't have it inside. And I think, one of the things that we're not looking at is that people are already using AI everywhere. They're using it on TikTok and in their banking, and it's already in Workday. It's already in ServiceNow. They're using AI in all these apps and things that we're touching. And so without helping people, there and giving them training and saying, here's how this is going to work at work, you're really kind of, setting your workforce to be unready for this change when it's come, not ready when this change comes. The next one is about how AI is not going to be some silo and tech project, and we're going to spend $4 million over here. It's got to be everybody, because it's not like a siloed tech project. It's going to be inside all of our operations and a lot of our processes. And people are going to need to know from the bottom to the top for success. And it's also because everybody needs to be also watching out for things that are weird or maybe that are not working, because we do have a lot of experiments with it. It's not just for automation. It's, we really need to be thinking about how we are spending so much time doing tedious tasks and things that are not in the reason that we got into our work. So as a coach, like if I could get rid of my invoicing and calendaring and spend more time with clients or spend more time thinking or reading, that's more innovative for me. And like, what could I do with that extra relationship time? So thinking about innovation is important. And then this last one here is just people are already using things. I'm already hearing clients say, well, I guess what I'll just do is go home, put that all into ChatGPT, and then take whatever's going to come out of it, and then I could come back to work. And so, people are already using things, they're already exposed to it, they're interested. So the more we get on the bandwagon and find out what we need to know to get on the bandwagon safely, the better. So I'll leave this here. Any questions or comments about this? I like for this to be super interactive. Any examples you're seeing? All right, no worries. And then this last one, this is 6 more of these, but we'll make it quickly too. It's a risk management issue. Obviously, cyber is going to play a role, compliance, protecting IP, patient data, customer data, the bias that's inherently inside these. There's a lot of risks out there. There's also risk to not engage. So if you're not moving forward, then you're going to be in trouble as a business, right? Because other people are going to be able to do the same stuff faster and cheaper. It's not always about automation, it's about augmentation. So it's about thinking about what would make me better. I am a coach, and so I use these in workshops. Katie and I have built a bunch of tools where we have people input some data and then they get a reflection summarized back to them. And it causes a lot of really deep emotive responses from people. So I can augment the experience of a workshop by doing that to a bunch of individuals at the same time. The next thing is something that I've actually experienced a business case of just this week, is that if you don't embrace the future and what AI is going to do, your good people are going to leave. So I've just had somebody who's been writing about LinkedIn AI experiences and talking about things, and she's just been asked to like kind of not cease and desist, but asked to only do this outside of business hours because there's confusion and they don't have an answer as a company. And instead of engaging and collaborating with her, they've just asked her to kind of stop. And so, how much time will she stay? I don't know. Right. And that's the kind of thing we have to be very, customers and clients are asking some of my folks, what are you doing? How are you leveraging this? Even in finance, they're asking about the stable coin and things like this. So this is all part of the excitement that's around it. AI is already in their business. They don't see it. I've already made this point that it's like built into your HR systems. It's built into everything, right? All the finance tools you might be touching. Many of the features, Microsoft, if you're using Microsoft, I can see in the background right now, they're trying to do an AI companion for the Zoom call, right? So it's already everywhere. And then the other thing is that companies that have a lot of data that could really benefit from AI, helping them with the predictability and things like that, you've got to kind of have a tight ship, or at least start thinking about how you can have a tight ship with your data in certain ways. And so thinking about where that infrastructure might be messy, it's time to start paying attention to that. And then lastly, I love what this one guy said who's in charge of AI for the state of North Carolina. His name was Isan. He's a really cool guy. I just met him at an event. But he just kept saying, like, when you're rolling things out, you really need to have this perspective of thinking of, for whom could I fail? So if it has bias built into it, or if it has privacy breaches or things, who could that fail? And they showed us a lot of examples of things that happened, like a shoplifting camera that ended up having bias built into it. And so it targeted certain kinds of people for being asked about shoplifting. So we need to really make sure that we're protecting ourselves and our people and our data as we're like rolling these out. Any comments about this?
I love what you've presented so far, Samantha. A couple of things. One, going back to what you were saying before about it's a mindset as well. I noticed that people, even if it's drudgery, people hold on to what they're good at and are surprisingly reluctant to let go of things that can more efficiently be automated. So I've just found that very interesting. And then what you were just saying about bias, when I was just kind of playing with Chat GPT just to see what they would come up with for my daughter, for a parent's speech at my daughter's wedding. And we entered in all kinds of things, including being a hockey player. We didn't specify it was the bride being the hockey player, not the groom. And the thing that came out, I mean, it was funny. We weren't going to use it, but just to see what they came up with. And it was automatically the groom that was the hockey player. I'm like, oh, okay. So for me, it personally reinforced how much bias exists in there. And of course, there's going to be bias because ultimately it's based on things that humans are producing. So anyway, I just find I find this very interesting.
Totally agree. And in fact, Katie and I had a legacy story, and we even had the ladies that we were presenting to were putting in their names, and they were still calling half of them boys. So then we had to add in like pronouns. Like, so it looked like we were very forward by saying, hey, what's your pronoun, by the way, along with your legacy story, just so they wouldn't get a story about a guy. It was, so it is something that but what is exciting is that you've learned something, right? You've learned something about prompting. You've learned how it doesn't think and it's not smart in certain ways, that it is just regurgitating back information. And then the bias implicitly built into it, if it doesn't have a guide, may choose something based on what they're seeing out there. And there's probably more stories about guys playing hockey than girls playing hockey.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The other piece, and they're doing a lot of work in Finland with children, with more critical thinking and applying this to, okay, here's what you get from AI, like information, and then critical thinking. Is it real? Is it accurate? Is it based on truth? Is it based on actual research that's out there? So that critical thinking it's always been an important skill, but it's stepped up now with AI.
Yeah, I think they think that kids are going to get lazier. This is a whole thing that could be 2 hours, but it's like my son who's younger, doesn't believe anything. And so my older son is kind of like 18, and that they're 18 and 14, but they're Z and alpha. And so the way my younger one is like, has a whole different language. And he's like, I'll come down and say, something happened yesterday. And he's like, which news story did you hear that from? Like, what was the source? And I was like, this is a very black and white situation. It's like a cat is lost. And he's like, where'd you hear that? So I think they are going to become critical thinkers. And I think that's what, the world is naturally building the kind of people that are going to have to exist in this world. So I don't worry about them as much, or that this is like when the TV came out and everybody went from playing outside to watching TV and sitting around all day. I do think there's going to be a little bit more rigor around this versus just having them write all their papers, right? So great point. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you, Olga. So this was kind of part of what we were doing with the People's Second Acts and Encore Careers, right? But it was really us living our own life, that we're awakening and realizing things need to change. We're reflecting, and then we're kind of planning, and then we're making the change to kind of the new life and in that transition zone. And then we're adjusting and adapting as we kind of reach there. And I'm sure you can think of any kind of transition in your life where you've had to go through this, whether it's a move or a divorce or a child going away to college or a child getting married, right? You have these realizations that life is going to change a little bit. And similarly, in this rewire process, is the same for AI. So what we're trying to do right now, I think, personally and professionally, is understanding the scale. And I don't think anybody can answer that, because like even the people that are making the biggest things that we're using all the time don't even know all the business cases and don't understand how big this is going to be or what it's going to impact. People are just guessing, right? So trying to understand the scale of change, assessing our own reactions to this much change. So like, am I feeling paralyzed by this? Am I feeling overwhelmed by this? How am I going to make a plan for myself and then also for my organization to move forward? And then secondly, then how do we start to create like what a common vision is? Like, we're not going to just let everything everywhere. Like, what are kind of our rules of the road? How are we going to bring people on the journey versus like dumping staff and then hiring staff that understands it, so we don't lose our culture and our folks? And then how do we start building out that learning as we go together in this process? Because there's just so much new stuff so fast. What does learning look like? How can we be agile about it, which is what the next workshop is going to be about? And they just had like, everybody was using a large language model and then a free one came out. So do I have to still pay $10,000 a year for this one? Because now they're going to give me one for free that's like basically just as good. And what if it has the same privacy stuff? So how can we be agile about those things? And what does that look like in this world where things are rapidly changing? And then how do we balance tech, humans, and growth? That's where companies are going to be starting to head in the next 12 months. And then next is when we kind of get there where things don't really look like the way they look kind of today, which will be in about 12 months, 18 months, 2 years. What is that new rhythm? How do we take on that there's a new advancement? What does learning look like every day? How do we decide what's garbage or not, or too risky or not? And then how do we evolve, continually with agility? Because I'll say that if you have a command and control, if business, if you have leaders that are not listening to their people, if you have leaders that aren't learners and aren't modeling learning, which is what we're going to talk about today, if your data is not cleaned up, if your processes aren't documented, AI is going to amplify all these problems. And then that's what your life is going to be about instead of AI. So it's like trying to kind of do things the right way and do things that are more sustainable. So today, the areas that we're going to talk about are bringing people along in the journey, engaging in learning, and building learning into day to day. Okay. Any questions or comments? Do you like this layout? Makes sense?
I like the
Good.
layout. One thing I think that's important is you have to recognize the differences across your organization, right? So there's two people in our organization that are a little bit more ready, I think, to use AI. And then we have two that are very conservative and are not very comfortable.
Sure.
One that's not, and two that are really not interested at all. So I think it'll be interesting to come up with tactics to how to bring people in where they feel okay about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're not writing code or anything,
Right.
but we are using it to try to simplify some processes. So I think that'll be interesting because I think that's one of the biggest hurdles that people have is you have people in different places. And we are all in different age groups as well. Not that that's the only factor, but it is important, I
Yes,
think.
I'm old now and I'm teaching this. So, you never know where it's going to come from, where the innovation is going to come from.
Yeah, and then just to add to Jill's point, Jill, you're already ahead of the game to a certain extent because you've already diagnosed where people are. And I think a lot of organizations, there's not even a way of diagnosing readiness. At least they're not using it. I'm sure there are 100 ways to diagnose readiness, but not necessarily being used.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so I'm going to do a little level set, little scaring us all in a healthy way about what's coming and what to think about. But it's also to give you words around these things and stats and ways to think about it so that we understand what's going on. So this is going to be the most accelerated period of technology change in our lifetimes, right? But we might go through that again. And then, what I was kind of mentioning was maybe little habits we have of the way we work and the things we do. It's not going to kind of work in the future. We're just going to have to be interacting a little bit differently. But it doesn't mean that it's changing like the relationship part or the human part. Most of the stuff is not smart enough to engage, without our direction and help. So it's not like kind of eliminating us. It's more of a mindset that we may be much more aligned to interactions with humans and how they're feeling, and will be about observation and supervision and those kinds of things. And if that's not a part of your world today, then that will be habits that will have to change, for instance. And then there's just, other stuff. We've got to kind of have a clean house to make sure it works and it doesn't kind of drift off and make outcomes that we don't want. So, I love this statement on the top. AI is not waiting for your annual strategy offsite. Okay, so it is moving forward. I see Gloria's already laughing at that. Thank you. And 50% of today's work activities could be automated with existing technology, and that was before Gen AI hit mass adoption. So we know there's a lot of fat to cut and waste out there and process stuff. I've spent my whole career on it, looking at those kinds of things and what we need to do. And now we see like job descriptions are already starting to shift. Workflows are evolving in real time. And it's the people that are kind of at the bottom many of the times, like maybe 3, 4 places from the top that are already playing with things, and also some entry level folks. A lot of orgs, most we're saying here, are in like kind of a wait and see mode and hoping for clarity before they act. They don't want to be like the person that leads. They want to be the ones that are fast followers, I've heard, right? But that might be too late, because you should be playing and experimenting and trying something. I think Gloria's putting some stuff. FOMO will do it. Wait and see and leave us behind. The bold ones are stepping up and re-apping yes, they're reaping the rewards. Absolutely. And I think like Katie's made a cute example on LinkedIn before, but like you don't want to start, remember the Atari hand, joysticks and playing that game? I mean, I think most people are that old. You don't want to just go in and be playing like one of these games now and never have played Atari, right? Like, so it's about like, how do you go in and start fumbling with it so that you can learn what works and what doesn't work, so you have an advantage. Why does this matter now? I really try to get into a couple of things. If you have a world where people don't say, I don't know, and that everything is about a performance culture, and everything is about like, here's what I know, and I've got this and this and this and this as part of like my credentials and my development, it's not going to help you in an environment like this. And this is what a lot of today is going to be about. Change happens when leaders are modeling learning, and they're rewarding it and protecting space for it. And that is why this matters now is because this is the only way your company is going to evolve, is really just looking at training and learning in a different way. So I like this, kind of reflection here is, don't ask whether your people can learn, ask whether your culture lets them. So are you making a culture where everybody's learning together? And I'd say, like, if you have even a small office, 2, 2, and 2, how do you all sit down and like listen to a podcast and talk about it? What does that possibly look at? And we'll talk about a lot of those things today. A 2023 BCG study found that organizations with strong learning cultures are 2.7 times more likely to be innovative leaders, and 3.1 times more likely to adapt successfully to disruption. So 73% of employees, think that they need to learn new skills, but only 42% say their organizations help them with it. I'm seeing a lot of people go outside. I'm seeing some weird credentialing on the inside, but I don't know how helpful it is. So it's very interesting. And this is a reflection. And I think like Gloria, you might be the only one to be able to reflect on this in this group. But when your people don't know something, like it's like, hey, does anybody know how we blah, 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 this, that, and the other? Do they say, hey, tell me more about that. I want to understand the problem. Do they just get quiet? Do they pretend like they know the answer, or do they kind of ignore it altogether? And so this is like kind of the reflection. This is one of the pulse checks that we have about whether or not you already have an existing learning culture. I want to actually go back a second. Any comments or questions here? I'm kind of going a little bit quickly. Hide it. Yeah. Yeah, because it looks like you don't have power when you don't know something. And I think that psychological safety of saying I don't know is going to be so important. I'm so sorry to hear that you're leaving, Olga. That was terrible. Sorry, we just found out somebody had to leave, and it was a very unfortunate situation. So I'll just recompose myself. So the hiding it is very scary, right? Like, so, and I'm not picking on you. All of people have I'm sure you have all of these there, and I'm sure you also have people that can say, I don't know. So we know you don't mean everybody. But this kind of ego first type of thing is not going to be great for this kind of environment. So, one of the most beautiful things I saw was this guy giving a demo, and he was probably in his late 20s, and he built a thing with a camera, and it uses AI, and it checks how many pieces of pizza are out, and they're going to connect it to like Uber Eats and put pizza on sale. And they're just finding ways that small businesses can do things. And I might have mentioned that in the other workshop. But then somebody asked him a question like, are you using this technology? And he's like, I don't even know what that is. Because he only knows what he's doing. He doesn't know anything else. And there's no time for us to all know everything else. There's just too much. So you were just going to be like, how do you find the right thing? Like, remember when apps came out and it's like, there's an app for that. There's an app for that, that kind of thing. And it's like, you could never know all the apps, right? And today you really could never know all the apps, right? So, but we've got to be able to say, you know, hide it. We don't want to be faking things and stuff. So it's thinking about that learning environment and where you're at. Oop, excuse me. So I hope this doesn't look like I'm trying to drown these people. Really worried about how I did this. I really wanted to just show that we're anchoring them, not drowning them. But it is also kind of reticent of what kind of goes on here, which is when we are trying to learn, we hear so much that people are too busy. I'm too busy to take this course this quarter. I'll take it next quarter. Because it's always like this big course. They also think of learning in these giant chunks. And then it's like, if I go and say that I want to learn something, then I'm going to be judged. Or if I was hiding it before and pretending like I knew about it, now it looks like I'm lying about it. Like there's a lot that goes on with like that. What if I take it and I don't understand it still? What if I mention that I'm learning it and I feel like I'm getting judged? And then, you know, the other barrier is not seeing your leader do anything. So if my boss isn't going out and learning, why should I do it? So I'm not really motivated in this way. And then lastly, we have a culture where people should be right about things all the time. And versus like, what are the right questions to ask in this situation? And I am a person also that always loves to say, that is a great question to people when they have it. And like, that's the modeling mindset that we have. Like, that's a good question for us to answer. What you don't want is a table of people pretending like they all know what's going on with AI and then going back to their desk and doing nothing. Like, this is one of my biggest fears for this. So the busyness is an anchor, the fear of being seen and seen as somebody that doesn't know something, or seen as somebody that didn't know something, or that I'm going to raise my hand and say something. And then the silence of the leaders and having to be silent because you always need to know everything are really these anchors that we want to try to fight with building this new kind of learning environment. Any thoughts on this? Still resonating?
I do have one anecdote about the giving people time to learn. When I was a chief of staff, we had a big organization and we heard this. We wanted people to be innovating, and at the time it was, you know, working differently. It wasn't necessarily about AI, but we did create space and time. We created a no meeting time with the intention that people would use that for innovation or self-development or learning, but they were so busy and behind with all of their regular work that just became the time that they used for catch up and the time that they used for administration. So there's some funny balancing act that you have to do where the workload has to be right for the time too. Otherwise, they just fill it up with things that kind of help their brain calm down because they've been overworked, overwhelmed. So I don't know if you have ideas about how to do that later, Sam, but that's something that I definitely saw in practice.
It's such a self-fulfilling, it just reminds me of like this hamster wheel and like running out of energy and then not being able to run anymore, right? Like, so it's like, if you're not feeding the good stuff, the hamster wheel is going to stop. And also I just want to say to everything that you're saying, the next workshop that we're doing, which is about agility, is all about what is most important and how you have to feed yourself going forward. And the busyness, you know, is another thing. I'm an agile coach, so I'm trying to calm down right now on everything that you just said. And I'll say, save it for some of the highlights in the next one. But, you know, it's like when we don't work out ever, or we don't eat right ever, what happens? What if we work and work and work and work and we burn out, right? And that's when everything has to stop. Like your health has to stop. You have to stop, slow down, make a plan, figure out what you're going to do. So we got to figure out, how can you balance these things, and really build into the culture, the model of learning, no matter what you think the priorities are. This is the priority, right? So some of these things will disappear. And then it just gets me into like regular basic, like, are you doing the work at the right level? Are you doing the things that you are? Do you really need to be this busy? Are you this much in demand? Where do you have to be and do those things? Because part of the success of AI is going to start being asking yourself these questions of what can be done by a machine? What could be done that's not with me? Maybe I could be less busy if I could go learn a little bit. There's a famous cartoon that's made by Heinrich Nybergs. I love him so much. And he has a cartoon where he's hacking at a tree with an axe, completely covered in sweat. And there's a guy behind him holding a chainsaw. And he goes, I'd really like to talk to you. And he goes, I don't have time right now. He's like, I'm too busy. And he's hacking at that tree. And it's like the perfect metaphor for like what's going on here. But I'll save that for the next one. But great points, Katie. All right, so how are we going to get through this, Gloria? You ready? I'm going to show you how. This is how we're going to fight it. We're going to talk about permission, time, and visibility. I've just had permission show up in another conversation I was having with somebody as well, because they feel like they're not allowed to go learn about things and they have to be told to go do it. So it's really interesting. Okay, so a little bit more, what's changing? Learning, AI is reshaping the work faster than organizations can react. Learning must be a visible shared behavior. It's like going to go get a coffee at lunchtime, whatever. It's got to be not a siloed function, but something we're all seeing all the time. What are you learning? It should feel almost like an innovation lab everywhere, right? Upskilling is only part of it. It's about this cultural permission to learn. And learning means failing. Learning means speaking up. Learning means I don't know. And then it's not a perk, it's a survival skill at this point. So we can't just like, I'm watching my son's eating bags and bags of candy. If I started doing that, I'd be diabetic in like one year. So, right. So it's like, it's not just like for fun. It's a survival skill that I have to do things the right way and fit in the right diet and do all those kinds of things. This is a lot of stuff on this slide. So feel free to read. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I wanted to share that. Katie's comment too. I'd love to learn if I ever had time to think. And so what's the signal you're sending as a leadership team? Constant fire drills, no reflection time, and calendars that punish curiosity. And you can look at the stats there, but this is going to kill companies that are constantly working on their old platform and doing all these kinds of things and can't make the space. I don't want to look stupid or slow everybody down. This is also a big one. This is fear. This is what hiding comes from. And the signal is nobody wants to admit mistakes. Learning happens in secret. And there's a little bit of there's very little upward feedback. Like, I don't really understand how to do this. Right. So that's the signal. And then this lack of visible leadership modeling. They tell us to learn, but I've never seen them do it. So are your executives at the highest level telling you to go listen to podcasts, showing you what they're learning about, even telling you how they might be doing stuff at home with AI? If the leaders are super polished and not real, and that coaching is absent around like omnipresent learning, curiosity becomes quiet. And that's the signal. We should be like asking more questions than we're saying what's happening is going on in status meetings. And then lastly, a culture that values the person that knows the answer. And I'm actually seeing in my coaching this hurt people. I'm being asked to coach people out of this because work is getting bigger and bigger, and because it's going faster and faster because of technology. Whatever they used to do. So it's like, if I had to clean houses, it's like, I'm very good at cleaning my house. So now they'll make me a manager. So there's 5 houses to clean, and I'm still going to help everybody clean the house. And now I'm doing 5 classes, but now things are getting faster and faster. And so what am I? Too busy now. And I am also feel like I have to know everything that's going on in all 5 houses at all times. And so when somebody asks me a question, I feel like I need to go down and do all that cleaning in all 5 of the houses to understand everything that's going on to be able to answer a question, because certainty is what's rewarded. Bring Samantha to that meeting because she'll know the answer, right? And so this culture of that, of like, even as you rise, you still have to know what's going on in the bottom, is not going to work, right? So we have to be able to really start saying, hey, how's it going in house number 3? And the person says, what would be most interesting? What's the outcome you're looking for? And let me go check that out. And it's got to be okay to say that. We can't know all the answers, right? And we're not going to know all the answers now. And maybe technology will help us a little bit, but this whole idea of this is how I've always done it, or this is how I got up to this level, it shuts down ideas, and it over reliance on experts. So I know how to do this. I know how to clean a house top to bottom. This is the way that it works, and nobody can kind of question me. I'm the expert. And this will make people not say, is there a better way to clean a house? Could we put those little robots down that vacuum? And because there are other stuff that we could do. Could we go room by room instead of doing like the floors and the counters and the walls, right? So there's just different ways to think about this. So I wanted to bring this up because these are signals we want to identify with. Any comments about this?
I think it's interesting that we never, not never, I shouldn't say never, but I think society is focused on the person that comes up with the solution and not the questions that led to the solution. Because
Right.
sometimes it does take some bravery to bring up proposed change to a system that's been the same way for a long time.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is great. And I've just had somebody articulate in a 360, that this other person is so deep in the weeds and trying to do everything by themselves and not like leveraging technology, that they're not sure that person's always doing the right thing because they don't have the big picture. And so like, how can we start to ask questions like, what's another way, or what's a faster way, or now that we have this technology, what could we do? And this is basic stuff. This is before AI, right? But now you have to do this because of AI, because
Right.
other people will use AI, and then you're going to be too expensive and behind, right? Other people will be able to do twice the work with half the people. Like this is like kind of what we're headed toward. Very good points. Any other comments? We good here? I watch the show Below Deck when I make decks sometimes, so you'll notice a very big sailing, lighthouse, and beach vibe on this particular one. I thought you'd enjoy that. Okay, so what's changing? It's accelerating. We've talked about this. There's other problems, by the way. Politics are bananas. Market volatility is all over the place. And this is eroding focus. I mean, who doesn't know what happened yesterday in the news? Everybody knows. We're all checking, we're all looking, we're all doing those things. And somebody's stock went down 15% yesterday just because they're in a fight with the president, right? So this is making us go check our 401ks. Like we are distracted by what is going on. There's a lot happening right now. And then you find out like people are trying to buy each other's companies and like, what does that mean? And what's going to cost me? So this is also eroding like psychological, all these people are laid off everywhere. Then all this news about how AI is going to take people's jobs. Everybody's kind of getting in this like panic thing, right? And it's changing what's happening. And then organizations, I don't know what is going on. Everybody's reorging, and they're like layering people and moving people around and deciding how they're going to evolve around these things. This is exhausting. Plus, we're all trying to learn, right? And so we're asking leaders to absorb uncertainty, communicate calmly, keep everybody aligned while adapting themselves, right? And it's not sustainable without rewiring how we lead. Any comments on this? We agree with this one, I'm sure. I saw the beautiful nods. Okay. The bolting on learning, like everybody's going to go and take an AI class by themselves. So they have some sort of scheduled training, and it's like seen as like, here's something maybe mandatory have to do, or you can do this if you want to. And it's, you should know this, and anybody that knows this better is rewarded, is not going to work. Like we need like a culture that's like, hey, how's your work? Did you try this on the thing? Have you ever done this? Like, what's something we could try on our team? The boss is saying, I listened to this podcast yesterday and they were talking about this, or I've read this article and shared it with you all. It's okay to ask questions. You don't have to know everything. And then people that are explorers are rewarded versus experts. I went and tried this and it failed. I think you guys just gave me an example, but like, oh, the example from Olga was great, which is I went out and I tried to write a speech and it chose the wrong thing. awesome that you went to go try to do that and that you loaded up files and information and did that. Tell us more about that process. I would like to do that, right? So how do we recognize those? And the two examples are, here's a company, Kodak, who wanted to protect their film sales and probably shut down people that wanted to go towards digital photography. And, you know, it's such a classic example. It's like a BlackBerry example, right? They're never going to want to have a screen without buttons. And then this other piece where it's like, here's $1,000, here's resources, go pursue something you care about. Guess which one was more fantastic? Obviously the one on the right. And you know what, we don't even know who is like your brilliant AI person in your company right now. It might not be who you think it is, right? So we want to be looking for those. Okay, here's our sales. I hope they look like sales. So what's going to help us like go towards the good signals, right? Creating that psychological safety. We're going to go into permission a bit. We're going to talk about time. So protecting learning space. And because it is work and it's important and it's just as important as your other tasky stuff, and making learning contagious by showing it in action. So like making an environment where it's fun to learn and that we're sharing that we're learning. So let's get into permission first. This really speaks to the hiding comment, but the lesson here is people don't avoid learning, they avoid feeling exposed. I remember even like, it would be weird if I was sitting at my desk at some of the companies I were taking a training class, because it feels like something I should be doing after work and not during work. Like, why is she not busy enough to where she can take like an hour-long class at her desk? Because I was always in like open settings and things like that. So it's like feeling exposed to learn, feeling exposed that I don't know something and I'm trying to learn it. And it might be rudimentary, so it's embarrassing. So what do leaders do? They say, I don't know out loud, and they show how they work their way out of it or what to do. Normalize asking questions and reward progress, not just how polished and how much everybody can answer everything all the time. So like, look at how far you've come, or I want to recognize, I actually want to recognize Jill, who probably wasn't doing much about this. And then we spun up all these conversations 6 months ago. And now she's chiming in every single one of our workshops about all the stuff that she's trying to do, right? That's amazing. I feel like you're totally with me when I'm talking about this stuff.
But it's true, because it's pushed me to try more and more things and to see what we can automate and investigate things. And some things don't all work out for us. You know, not every tool is for the company that you're with, but there are more than you think there are, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? There's definitely more things that are available to you. Like I said, we don't write code, so I'm not going to be using ChatGPT to help me write a code. But there was an interesting call I had with a CTS candidate, career transition. So an arm of our business, Gloria, we do when there's a reduction in force or layoffs, you know, we help candidates find their next path. And this young lady was like, you know, somebody mentioned this app. It's an AI app, and it came up with words that in her specific industry helped her get her resume noticed, or a friend of hers. And she's like, do you guys know it? And I said, no, why don't you share it with me so we can investigate and take a look and see if it's something that we can use? Because we have a lot of barriers, obviously, like other large companies. But, you know, we are more open now than we ever were. And I think part of it, Sam, is because of this, to investigate things to see if they'll work for us. Whereas before, we would have never done that. It would have got shut down real quick. You know, so I think that's pretty cool.
That's the vibe. And you've had to change. I also want to recognize that you also have to change the way you work to keep up with the way that this works.
Yes.
And then it's going to introduce new bells and whistles, and then it's going to say these other things. And you know, one of the things that my friend, who's definitely at the tip of the spear, experimenting with this, with NVIDIA laptops and kind of all that stuff, is that when they're really playing with things, he's like, I have to change the way that I work faster than I can even handle it. And this is like what I do for a living. I'm the AI head. And so I think that's the other stuff that's going to create, like, and you want to be able to sit around and talk to people about it, because that calms down the inertia, right? Other people to talk to about how that works. So healthy leaders are saying, you know, what are you learning in their kickoff, right? What did you finish? not what did you finish, right? So we want to say, how's everybody learning? Like, tell us about a podcast. Who has a resource? What's going on? Sharing thoughts. You don't have to sit there and like lose your mind for a 15-minute dissertation, but thinking out loud, like, hey, I want to try this, but I'm not sure how this is going to work with our data, and we need to have a way to observe it. That's the kind of conversation everybody needs to hear so that we can learn from each other. And then again, recognizing people that are trying, failing, learning, and asking questions and surfacing blind spots or areas that were companies in trouble. And then protect people who speak up, especially early adopters, and protect the dissenters. Like, even the people that say, hey, this could be a cyber risk. It's like, you don't have to say, oh, Paul, that's what you always say, right? You're always worried about cyber, you know, this, that, and the other. It's like, tell me more. What are you worried about specifically? So how do we bring people to that table to have deeper conversations about that? So that's what that permission looks like. And then, we have a workbook that I have not put out yet, but let me go and grab the link for it. Or maybe Katie, you could put it in the chat for us. Sorry, Gloria. And what I wanted to ask, sorry, I didn't mean to pull you on camera too. I forgot, we have a workbook for you, but it doesn't kind of start until now. So you're all set. There's the link to download it. And it will have another link on it that we'll use in a little bit too. But the question is, and we can just kind of talk through this or share this out, is, are you creating as a leader and as an organization psychological safety for learning? So these are questions to ask yourself. Do I regularly share unpolished thinking and what I'm still figuring out with people? Do I ask open-ended questions that don't have one right answer? So like, what do you think our vision should include for AI and what shouldn't it include, right? Am I public, and this is across anything, it doesn't have to be an AI topic. Do I publicly recognize people that try things and take risks, that are smart and try to learn new, faster ways to do it? And then am I protecting and encouraging early adopters and challengers? So am I modeling saying, I don't know, tell me more about that? I know exactly the bosses I had that said, I don't know, and the ones that didn't. And fought me and tried to make me think the way they think. And they were not coming from the same direction as me. And it took a long time to like work through the machinery of that. And sometimes that's like micromanagers and people, they're protecting knowing everything. And it's just not the world for that. So thinking of your last team meeting, and we put this as like a checklist in your workshop, check it out, like take it maybe to your workshop and think about those things. What was present and you know, what does happen that's, you know, what's missing from there that needs to happen around your organization. So this is just a reflection and a little checklist. You'll have that in your workbook to play with. And then I would say, and I can put anybody on the spot here, but it's like, what's something you learned recently that didn't go perfectly? Who's got an example of that?
I've got one. Samantha, this one involved you too. But we used an AI and we built this automation for a workshop that people could use and build a little plan for themselves. And I got a message from Samantha while I'm on vacation that said, hey, this tool's not working. Do you know what's going on with it? And I tried to do quick troubleshooting and see if, you know, the normal things had broken. And I actually still don't know what went wrong with that one. So I just had to rebuild it with a new thing. But it's not like it tells you when it's breaking, or it's not like it tells you when it's not working. So we built this whole process on top of it. And it's so new and changing so fast that I think they replaced the model version I'd selected or something like that. I haven't done a full debrief on what happened, but you know, that put Sam in a bad spot. I couldn't fix it in the moment like I usually can. And it was just this feeling of like, ugh, how do we even build controls around something like this when it's so new and changes on a weekly basis or a monthly basis? So that's maybe a learning that's still going on because I don't have an answer yet.
Yeah. And I think this stuff is going to get twisted up. We got talking about agents and ways that things can go on. And the question is like, are we talking about that? And I'm for sure talking about mistakes we're running into and things that we're trying and automations we created. One time I tried to use one with a client, and she went in and wrote a legacy bio, and then she went in and did like something like her brand. And the second one didn't work because it was exactly when I didn't have like 2 pennies left in the account that I had in the background, because $20 lasts like a year. It's hysterical. So I want you to just think of one personal learning moment that you could share with your team or with somebody else to model that permission. All right. And Gloria, do you want to share one there or pass? It's okay to pass.
Pass, thank you.
Okay, no worries. So in this permission-based culture, here's something that I want you to think about, right? So I'm giving you kind of the checklist of stuff to do. So you can think about starting meetings with what are we learning? What's going on? What is everybody learning? The win of the week. I love this one because I love competitions and I love trophies. And I don't know why I'm so obsessed with them. I also don't care about losing, so I'm a really good sport, but I do like competitions and stuff. So especially about positive things. So the win of the week, if the Slack threads could be like, hey, I failed at this, or I learned this, or I did this, right? It could be on like an instant messenger with its own channel of what's going on. I've taken this risk, or here's what questions I have. And then the leadership debriefs could be, hey, I'm an executive. Maybe they record me for like just a couple of minutes on Loom or one of these tools and just say, hey, I went in to go learn this. Here's what you all should do. I invite you to go do this. How could you share that out? And then this one, I don't know how popular this is going to be in an innovation lab culture. It's great. But people really maybe keeping a digital board or something somewhere that says, here's something that I failed at, like writing a speech and it made a man, made the bride a man or something. But here's something I did, and this is what it taught me. And so that we don't all have to keep making the same mistakes. And it's fun. It's like, what could you throw up against the wall? And this is what I'm learning. And then, really having a leader say, ask me anything. And what you're also modeling there is the leader saying, I don't know, or that sounds like a good idea, or it sounds like we need to invest in something. All of this is to kind of give that permission to be in a space where you can ask questions and feel safe. And not everything is everybody's style, right? I definitely could do anything about the speaking stuff, right? I love that stuff. Number one, what are we learning? Recognizing people. I used to love that. And maybe this ask me anything would be very natural in my leadership style. So we also have to think about what's authentic. All right. Time. So time is a strategic investment, not a spare resource. It's one mindset we want to have. And learning doesn't happen when you're done. It happens when you make space for it. So it's just like the gym and giving yourself that lunch in your work time during the day, or making time for whatever you need to do with your kids or your spouse. This is also got to be in there. And what healthy leaders do is they schedule leader time, or learning time. They're building times to kind of gather, what am I learning? And now what do I want to learn next? Like, where's this journey taking me? I'm not just going to boop, 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 learn all these random things. And how could we have like a conversation about what we're learning and what that means? And then I'm going to say no to like easy, busy work so that I can make time for growth. Right? So I'll in action, what this looks like is carving out 30 minutes a week for learning. That's not optional. It's strategic. It's a working session, right? I think it should be more than that, but let's just say 30 for now. And then pause and reflect before we move to the next thing. What are we learning here? Really creating an environment of that. And then here's a lower priority task we're cutting to make room for upskilling. I don't know what all these people are so busy for if everything's going to change from AI, by the way. So we really need to reflect, are we prioritizing the right things in the first place? Any questions or comments about this?
You know, back on what you said before about where people would judge sitting at your desk, like, how do you have enough time? I think there's a lot of companies that are stuck in that mindset. I did work at one where someone would constantly come to me and be like, so and so needs more work. So and so needs more work. And I always just say, how do you know that's not like the 2 minutes they're taking to decompress, and then they're actually going to perform better because they took 2 minutes to decompress. So if somebody was taking a webinar or a class, I think that this individual would be like, oh my God, why are you doing that? We don't have time for that unless it was during your own lunch. You know what I mean? And I think it's interesting because those are probably the companies that are still doing things with paper or that are afraid of AI or afraid to make those changes. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I think it's interesting.
yeah. Now I want you to think about if you gave up 30, if I gave you 30 minutes a week to learn, what would you do with it? How would you approach it? Everybody try to think of something unique that you would do if I just handed you a magic 30 minutes. Would you read? Would you listen to podcasts? Would you go experiment with something? What would you try to do? All right. Anybody have a good one to share? I want to learn how to build an agent. That's my next thing that I want to learn how to do.
We dropped ours in the chat, Samantha.
Oh,
So I've been having fun with watching videos about science or things that I just have no knowledge of, because learning brand new words or being exposed to brand new concepts, I think, is really good for my brain and being more creative and coming up with other new things.
nice. And then it looks like I stole Gloria's answer by accident. Who would look at agents and automation to, yes, great mindset to multiply that 30-minute investment. You're going to get ROI if you can get the ROI on it, right? And then more automations here. So this is good. So would love for you to look at your calendars and maybe mark down 30 minutes that you can spend next week and really try to block that, experiment, reflect, stretch. It doesn't need to be learning, but also like maybe reading something and reflecting. Try to find a time that's growth time that you protect, and it can be a recurring 30-minute window. Like, this is what I do on Tuesdays mornings from 8:30 to 9. So think about a time that you could do that. And then that will be a micro habit that you have. And I tell you, it's not going to take long to be like what I would say at that tip of that spear, because there's not a lot of people investing in this now. I keep going to events and stuff, and I can't believe how much I know just because I'm investing just a little bit of time, every day. All right. And then this is the next one. We have, we can drop this link in the chat for you too, Gloria, or you can feel free to use your QR code. So what you'll find there is if you put in your name and then your industry and put in the level that you're at, it's very easy to fill out. We'll let you kind of do this while you're on the phone. And then some things you might be interested in about AI. We've offered some suggestions, but then you can like personalize it by writing things about agents or automations within leadership and training or whatever you want to put in there. And then it will send you a 30-day plan that will say Monday through Friday, if considering your investment, if it's 15 minutes every day, but you can pick and choose from here. We're just kind of trying to give you some options. And just, Gloria, just let me know when you're done so that I know when to move on. So take your time.
I'm done. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Making learning visible and safe to share. So if we can't see people learning, then we assume that it's not valued, right? I'm gonna mirror behaviors that I see my leaders doing, the people that I'm trying to be like. So narrating their learning process out loud, especially when using new tools like AI, making growth behaviors visible. Like I block out this much time for learning in a day and not hidden in side projects or one-on-ones or alone, and normalize talking about failure, progress, and the messy middle moments. I love that statement. And so what that looks like in action is, hey, I'm learning, this is what I'm learning right now. This is what I can't figure out. It's fuzzy for me. Right? Or let's do a quick one thing I learned this week at our team meeting. Or I tried this AI tool, it didn't work perfectly, but here's what I found out. Right? So this is the way we make this kind of stuff visible. Okay. And I want you to think about who on your team do you actively see talking about learning or doing the learning, and you know, how do you see them, you know, experiencing experimentation and learning? I definitely see Katie doing it all the time. We're talking about all the stuff. She's like, I learned how to do something new today. Go test it. She gives me something. But it's about making that plan. And then the other thing is too, is like to make things public and make that, you know, an important thing. Make sure that, again, we're using these kinds of languages. How can we make that visible to your team this week? You know, potential prompt. Here's one thing I'm exploring. It's not perfect, but help me think a little bit differently. All right. And then I've got in your workbooks things to check on for yourself about whether or not your team has this, or whether it's something that, you know, you need to explore. So check what applies to your team today. We talk openly about what we're learning. We share unpolished moments. You know, we're celebrating learning moments in Slack teams. It's normal to say, I don't know. We run short what I learned series, or we do experiments, or peer learning is part of how we work. Knowledge isn't siloed. So when we talked about hiding before, this is like the opposite. So do we have this visibility? And if you're not kind of checking most of this, that means the learning culture might be invisible to the team, and that's the risk. Okay. It's a little tool for us. And then here, I like to ask people to maybe say, what's one or two things that you've tried that didn't go well recently? I think Katie gave an example of this too, that we built something and it worked and worked and worked and then it didn't. And write down examples of, you know, what didn't go well. So I tried using a new AI tool for meeting notes. It missed a bunch, but I realized how important it is to prompt it better. Or I read about Gen Z prefers different formats for feedback, and now I'm rethinking my one-on-ones. That's a good thing and kind of a thing somebody's learning. I got to figure out how to have a one-on-one with my Gen Z here in the house, because nothing I'm doing is working. That room is still a mess all these years straight. I don't know what's going on in there. And think about, you know, when you do that, what does it feel like to share that? And how would your team react if you made this kind of learning public starting next week? Right? This is really important for leadership development and learning too. All right, I'm just going to share some formats. We're almost done here. But you know, these are just fun ways to play. Again, I'm kind of giving you more the what I learned. We talked about the experiment wall, learning spotlights. You know, one member maybe shares something. Katie and I run a weekly AI forum at a networking group that I am part of. And we talk about the news. We talk about billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar investments. And Gloria, we can work on that. We talk about multi-billion-dollar investments, and then we have people come and showcase something they've made or something they want to teach us. And it's kind of sometimes a little bit of a hot mess, and it's okay. It's actually okay that it's a hot mess. We had a demo that wouldn't work because it turns out such a small, they're only like a 6-person company, and the dev guys were doing something. And so all the systems were down, and she's trying to do it. And she didn't know the guys behind her were like making it not work, but she had like a backup way to show us. So we had to like cut the video and then start from there. And then yesterday, somebody had their speaker notes off. We have to cut that. And then some people, their stuff works and they're fumbling through. But guess what we're doing? We're all learning together. And it's like a super safe place where we've made this forum. I mention this because you should make one of these at your work. Talk about the news. I'll tell you how long it takes me to prep for this meeting. 25 minutes, maybe. I look up the news stories. We talk about it in a roundtable. People give perspective. We go and do those billion-dollar investments just so everybody sees where all the money's going and like the chips and what's happening and who's investing in what where. And then we have somebody teach us or show us demoing work, which is where I grew up in Agile, is like showing all work. And then if they fumble through it or whatever, what are we learning? Right? So that's fine. So creating something like that and seeing who wants to be a part of it. I'll tell you what, once people find out that there's like a learning forum that's AI inside your job, everybody's going to want to go, right? Because nobody wants to get left behind. So that's how you like unhide it. Retros is about looking back at what you've done. We're going to talk about that next week with agility a lot. Looking at modeling vulnerability by keeping learning logs. And that was kind of what that learning wall was a little bit too. And then a growth challenge. What's something we could do and try this month or in this period of time, right? As a team, and make it fun and measurable and shared. And then lastly, visual boards. Like, how do we start showing people you know, things we've made and stuff we've done. I know when we designed apps in a bank that I worked at, we would show some of those around the office, but how can we find a way of something that we show in a visionary way, maybe time we've cut from the jobs that we're doing. So these are all some ideas. Any of these particularly resonating? The show and tell Fridays are good.
I like the what I learned rounds, even earlier when it was like, a couple things that you can do. Sometimes when you start off a meeting, instead of jumping right into information, it's like, what's one thing that you learned this week? You know what I mean? It almost helps people feel comfortable sharing, even if it wasn't unsuccessful, or even if you tried to learn it, you just learned that it didn't work well for what you were trying to accomplish. I think that's a good way to get started, and you might be able to get into more of these other ones because I think they're all great ideas. But I really like the what I learned this week.
Yeah. Yeah. And you should have an answer.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, and you're telling me you like the what I learned, the show and tell Fridays, which are awesome. You can make a forum. It's like the Daily Show a little bit. It's like silly. We talk about the news. Everybody kind of gives their input, but we also learn a lot from those conversations and dialogue. It's very open. I'm very casual about it. I just pull the news on ChatGPT and then I pull like the story about the billion and then somebody shows us something. It's great. And then 7, the growth challenges. I love that too. Those are nice. And 6, learning leader logs. Yeah, it's kind of the same as this, but how do we keep showing that everybody's progressing and doing something? It's fun to look back on what you've done too. So in my final below deck slide of having sailboats going around, just asking like what you think you might do differently. And, what's one signal that you could change this week to make learning feel safer and more rewarding for people? What's one thing you could start doing where they're like, oh man, she is all about learning. She really makes this feel safe. Or I don't know what she's doing with this AI stuff, but it does make me want to learn something to feel it, because I feel like she's getting ahead. What's one thing you could do?
I think you can share some of the times where you failed. Like
Yeah.
you said earlier, letting people know that reaching out and trying is just part of the experience.
Yeah. Very good.
I just put in the chat, I'm getting inspired to make a how I failed with AI post for LinkedIn to start a conversation there. Because I'm sure we all have these funny stories about, oh, I made a thing and it called all these women men, or, I built a thing and then it failed in the middle of the night while I was in Scotland. Like, these are just as important to talk about as, oh, I built this cool thing and it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Because it's not always a win, but it's always learning.
Yeah. And I think there's something good to say, and we're business owners, so we have to build automations and do things, and it's just us, right? I came from technology and banking, but that doesn't mean I know how to run like high scale marketing newsletter, platforms. So like I always tease with Katie, it's like the first email that we sent out took me 8 hours. The second email took me like 15 minutes, and now I send them in like 1 minute. Like it's as long as it takes me to cut and paste the content in there. It's out. Katie actually goes in and does a part of it, so she probably only spends a couple minutes. But it's about that, and we all need to kind of step up and learn these things so that we can kind of have that language. And it's also helping us what we do. I think on top of, I like the how I failed. I also like to say, like how I used I don't know today. Because I don't know is going to be the most popular words in AI in future. How does that work? I don't know. How does this robot how am I supposed to know how this robot works? Biometrics, AI, how agents work inside Microsoft. Like there's no way that we're all going to have like a grip on that. And we kind of don't have to, because we don't need to program anymore. So it's good. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We have one more left, which is in just a couple weeks. I think it's on the 20th.
We may change that date. I think it's actually a holiday in New Jersey.
Oh yeah, that's right. So we're going to be.
We didn't realize when we set the schedule, but it will be in a few weeks still.
No problem.
Once we know, we'll send out that information.
Sounds great. That's fine. I'm fine if it's in July. I'm no problem. But we will be coming out with that one. That one's going to be a lot about that agility and making priority, and how do you like make a vision around AI? Because now we've talked about like handling the change, what it looks like to create a leadership culture. And then now how do we kind of figure out like, how do we make a vision of where we're going, and how do we pivot and kind of prioritize to get there? And what is it like to have this agility mindset too, so that we're all like kind of going in the same direction, but we're not getting too, as it was mentioned in the beginning of the call, which was so important, emotionally tied to the way things were or the way we used to work. It's unbelievable how emotionally tied people are to like business processes. So it's going to be a great talk. It's my most passionate section. And we always want to highlight, like, we come in, we do one-on-one or offsites. We talk to people about like AI one-on-one. We help do prompting workshops. There's a lot of things that we can do to help people out, talk to you about how you pick your platforms. We can even talk to you a little bit about the data stuff. We've got partners. So if there are pieces of this, developing your AI vision and stuff, we create a lot of custom training. We're doing some coming up, and it's very exciting. So if you need to get your people on the same track, please reach out to us and call Shannon or Jill, and or reach out to info@AJ O'Connor. Anything else? I'm sorry to just catch the rest, Michael, but we are going to have a recording of this call for you as well.
Well, thank you, Sam. It was a really great presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great workshop again. I really enjoyed the first one, and the second one was just as good. I'm
Okay.
looking forward to the third one.
I can't wait till you tell us what you're doing with all of them. So we're looking forward to more feedback when we come back together. All
Sounds
right.
good.
Thank you. That was
Thank you.
amazing. Have a great day.
Take
You
care.
too.
Bye-bye.